Welcome to By His Grace podcast. Not worth it, but worth it. I am Tansha Ward, and I would like to welcome all of the listening and viewing audience. Welcome to the podcast where I get to sit and speak with amazing guests who tell their stories. And tonight I have with me Michael Galloway. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And I am so honored that you are willing to come on and share your story. I will
Absolutely.
formally introduce you to our guests and then we will get started.
Okay.
Michael is a husband, a father, basketball and track all district performer, a bachelor's and master's in mass communications degree he received from Dillard University. He's a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. He was a part of the team that launched WDUB, which was Dillard's on-campus radio station. He is the host of First Mind podcast. He is a coach and a mentor. Michael is a former resident of Bogalusa, Louisiana, and he returns there on a regular basis so that he can share his talents and his skills with the youth in the community. Michael, can you pour your camera either up or you sit lower? That's better.
Is that better?
Yes,
Okay.
now we
Got you.
can see your
Got
face.
you. Got you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on with you.
Thank you so much. So, in one word, give me a word that starts with the letter M that describes you.
Letter M that describes me. I would say motivator. I try to make it a priority to motivate people around me, try to lift their talents and synergize with folks. And so I would say motivator would probably be the best thing I could describe myself with the letter M.
And what do you normally do when you are trying to motivate people? What's the one thing that you feel is important during motivation?
Well, I think it's important that you meet people where they are. You have to, in order to motivate, I think you have to establish a level of trust with people. So you want to engage them to let them know you have their interest. And I think from there you can establish a rapport with them and be able to communicate well with them. And from that trust that you build, a lot of times you can be a model or example to show them the way or to show them how you do things.
Exactly. That's important to meet people where they are because sometimes people who are working with people, they have a really good heart, but they want people to be at their level.
Absolutely.
And they want people to have already arrived at a certain point. But you
Absolutely.
understand that it's important to meet them where they are so that you can be effective with motivating them.
Absolutely. There are levels to everything. Everybody doesn't learn at the same speed. They don't excel at the same speed. They don't grow at the same speed. So I think just dealing with that nuance in each person's character and how best to approach them and communicate with them is important.
Exactly. And that's key when we are called to work with people. To be effective, we have to really know what we're doing because everyone can't just be a motivator.
No,
Some
no.
people mean well, they just don't know how to make it come across to someone in need.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Totally
Exactly.
agree with that.
So how was it being reared in small town Bogalusa?
Bogalusa. It was great. I graduated from Bogalusa High School in 1985. So growing up in the 70s and 80s with four older brothers, it was terrific. I think for us, it was that we made our own things happen. We had a lot of energy. There were a lot of organizations for the youth at that particular time that were focused on from Little League baseball to doing things with the school. So it was great. It was a great opportunity to develop and have a lot of folks around you who were very successful. So I really enjoyed growing up in Bogalusa, for sure.
So you actually were able to live the community approach where they say it takes a village.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I think about times where we share meals. Like my neighbor, Mrs. Frazier, who was very like a mentor growing up, like a second mom. We ate off each other's table. They disciplined us. It was truly a community approach to everybody being on the same page, where there was a line of delineation between adults and between the kids. So we had a lot of respect for that, growing up, and I think that that developed a lot of us to where we are today and being successful.
Exactly, because we clearly knew how far we could go with adults.
You better believe it.
And we were reared to respect our adults, and we don't see that in our youth of today.
No,
They challenge adults sometimes where they feel like they're on their level, which
right?
is not what we were accustomed to when we were being reared in community environments
No,
where everyone had their hands on the kids.
I totally agree with that. That's one of the biggest deficiencies now.
Right.
And kids develop those traits growing up, and then they transition those traits to adulthood, and you see some of that same energy spilling out in the workplace and in school environments where kids don't like to listen and follow instruction and things like that. So yeah, you have to start early with that and that discipline approach to let everybody know you cannot be a good leader unless you know how to be a good follower.
Exactly. Exactly. And for us, because we had such a solid foundation,
Hmm.
loving, caring, we had the family approach, the community approach when we were being reared. How do you feel when you return back to Bogalusa now?
That's a phenomenal question. I have mixed emotions, honestly. Just remember, like when I was getting out of high school, like I said, in the mid '80s, and going on to college at Dillard, and then when we return home for the holidays or what have you, and meet up, there was a certain level of safety. Not to say you didn't have skirmishes or incidents, but just some of the mass shootings and things that have occurred in Bogalusa over the last maybe 5 to 7 years. And kudos to the administration there, Mayor Tyron Trung and the police department, the firemen, everybody that's still leading in that way to reduce the crime. But for me, sometimes to even go home and in a smaller town and not really feel that safe if you didn't see anybody that you knew, it was a little alarming. But it's still home for me. My parents still reside there. My mother and my father. I have two brothers. My oldest two brothers still reside there in Bogalusa. So, like I said, it's somewhere I always go and find a way to enjoy myself and just being with family mostly when I go there.
Good. And you were a athlete when you were being reared in Bogalusa.
Yeah,
How easy was it to be a two sport athlete and perform at such a level where you were able to win championships and be a pillar in the community? How difficult was it to play two sports? Because most youth focus on one and you
yeah,
play
that's a
two.
great question. That's a phenomenal question. I think for us at the particular time that I was growing up, it was more common than what it is now. Cause like for us in Bogalusa, we didn't have like a lot of travel programs like AAU programs that took you out of town and things like that. So mostly for us it was school sports and athletics and then the little league, baseball. But it was kind of a natural thing too because most of the kids at that time when I was growing up in Bogalusa played multiple sports, and it takes a level of focus and discipline, to learn multiple sports and be good at it. But we spent a lot of time. I think during that time we spent a lot of time and energy on sports. Our coaches didn't really have to particularly tell us to go work out. we would actually go to the field house in the summertime, and our coaches would give us access. Like my basketball coach, Coach Ricks, in high school, he would give us the keys to the gym. And we were able to go over there and self-manage. We didn't have any fights. We would lock the gym with 15 and 20 guys, and we would run for 3 hours. So, it takes that level of discipline and focus to do it. And I think just environmentally, a lot of kids were staying out of trouble through sports when I was coming up.
Exactly. Because to learn that discipline, it actually becomes a part of your character.
Yes,
And
yes,
you
it
can
does.
take those same skills off the court, off the field, and walk in integrity. And it teaches you how to respect others.
It does. It does. There's so much that is learned, especially through team sports. Because
Yes.
you're exactly right. I think that's where, and we were talking a little bit earlier. You mentioned the youth and coming up. I think that was a big difference because you had to learn how to share being on the team. It
Right.
wasn't just all about you. And some of those same character traits that you develop in team sports translate into your life. We call them in Sports Workers Academy. We call them life skills, things that translate that you can gain from sports, but you can translate and move those to your everyday life and your work life and your home life, and allow you to progress and be disciplined and focused. So, I think there's a lot of parallels there between sports and life.
Yes. And what life lesson do you feel had the biggest impact on who you are now as an adult that a coach instilled in you?
I would say probably I'm going back to like Coach Floyd Timmons, Riveteers Braves, Little League. Like I said, we started early. So, playing baseball with Coach Timmons, he taught us a lot. And then, and I think that was across the city of Bogalusa. Those coaches, Coach Lampton, Coach Timmons, the coaches from the other side of town, Papa's Quarters, Coach Mingo, and all Coach Bickham, all those particular coaches took a vested interest in you as a kid. They made sure that you made it home if you didn't have a ride. You know what I'm saying? Everybody jump on the back of somebody's truck, get them home. So it was more of a community effort, but it was so much talent in Bogalusa for it to be that small of a town. It was tremendous amount of talent and competition in Bogalusa also. So I think Coach Timmons taught us. I was on the early River Terrace team, and they became champions. And I think I would give us credit for kind of starting that, that discipline and that being focused and on the same page. I think we were very fortunate. But Coach Timmons taught me a lot of lessons early on. I'll say, yeah, he was very impactful.
Would you consider him to be a mentor for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's one of many mentors. I mean, I would say, starting with my father, Dr. M.J. Galloway, who's a pastor there in Bogalusa and in Mississippi, and my mom, to be able to see growing up, something to emulate. I think it would start there. But Coach Timmons was a mentor. Coach Gary McGee, my high school principal, mentor. Miss Barbara Butler, who was my music teacher in high school, mentor. Going off to college, Lisa Frazier Page from Bogalusa, who's a writer who wrote for the Washington Post and is a New York Times best-selling author. She was my mentor and ended up being my instructor. She was from Bogalusa, and that when I went to Dillard, she was actually my instructor at Dillard. So the pride that I had being from Little Bogalusa in the city of New Orleans and her up there leading a classroom was very influential. Mr. Warren Bell, my instructor, math comm instructor, he was a mentor for me as well. So I mean, I could go on and on with that. It was so many people that had an imprint.
And that's what is needed in our youth of today,
Yep.
because we find that there are a lot of adults that live their lives through the children.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
instead
That's
of
true.
actually teaching the children how to develop and come up with their approach to life,
Right.
some adults revert back and they want the children to be who they were.
Right. Right. And that could be problematic
Yes.
because a lot of times, you have shortfalls. Just give you a quick example. Like when my daughter started playing basketball, I didn't want to be her coach. I didn't coach for the first year because I didn't want to have any undue influence. If it's something she liked organically, she wanted to do it, I want her to do that. I didn't want to be that guy, you know,
Mhm.
because some parents are overbearing. I coach in youth sports out here in Atlanta, in the Grayson area, over 300 kids in our unit. Some parents, they're all in the huddle. You know, they're just doing too much. So, and you see that a lot on the AAU circuits too. So, you know, like you said, just play your role as a parent and support your kids. Find something that they enjoy and that they like, and support them and give them the resources to be successful.
And it's funny you say that because my son played park ball
Uh huh.
when he was much younger.
Yes.
And he did football, basketball, and baseball.
Right.
But what I did as a mother is I stopped attending the practices. I would bring
Smart.
him to the practices and then I would leave
Right.
because I didn't want him to be looking for my approval or disapproval when the coaches were engaging
Right.
him in a manner where the coaches were speaking to the
Right.
boys. And I found that when I was there originally, he would look to see how
What's
do
going
I
on?
feel
How
about
you
what's,
respond?
yes, about what's going on. So I spoke to the coach and I said, I'm going to stop sitting at practice
Hmm.
because I don't want him to be looking for my response.
Right. Right.
And that way you can engage him and the coaches can engage the boys and instill some of those life skills that they needed that would carry them and help them to develop that team approach to the game
You're
instead
exactly
of it
right.
being individuals. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And I see it a lot of times because mothers, we are so involved in our children's lives.
Absolutely.
And sometimes mothers can be so overbearing
Hmm.
where it's hard for the coaches to actually coach some of the
No
kids
question.
because the mothers are so demanding.
No question, no question. It could become too much. And I was very blessed, like coaching here, because we was coaching 9 and 10-year-old young ladies, because you know my daughter obviously being a young lady, and it was very good because I did get a lot of trust from the parents. They felt I had a young lady's best interest, so they stayed out of the way, you know. But you know, as you progress, sometimes you get parents who, oh, my daughter should be playing more and things like that, and not a really accurate reflection of the kids' talents or where they are in their, you know, in their progression. So you get that, but it makes it difficult, and that goes into play for like teachers and instructors, because like if my dad was to have to come up to the school, he would be approaching me about having them come up to school, not what the teacher said.
Right,
So
right.
the teachers they had the runway to be able to discipline you, and know that they will have the backing of the parents, you know. So that is very, very important to give them that ability to be able to spread their wings and learn. And again, you're going to have times and situations as you get into your career where you're going to be you're going to have to take some feedback from people, you know. Sometimes, you know, and I'm in a management type role. Sometimes you're having a conversation with folks and they may just have a meltdown, you know, and you're like, you know, they just can't take any feedback. So, and you learn that progressively as you grow and develop, and I think it's important that parents understand that too.
Right. And there are some sports when children are younger,
Hmm.
they feel as if they need to have the all children are winners approach.
Right.
So
Right.
everyone's getting an award,
Right.
everyone's getting a plaque, and that can have twofold approach to the development of the children
No doubt.
because some children, while they can look at it as I'm doing the best I can and I'm rewarded for trying, then you have some children who do not understand losing and failure in life
Yes.
because I never was a loser. Everyone got an award. And when they
Yes.
get on the next level, and now there's a separation in skills and talent, they can't handle
They
that.
can't adjust.
Right.
They can't adjust. And you know, we're big about sportsmanship, because you being a person that can go and shake someone's hand after a tough loss builds character.
Right.
It's easier for everybody to just be able to win, you know what I'm saying? Everybody happy. But when you take that tough defeat and you have to swallow your pride and go across there and say, "Hey, good job, good game," and walk away with your head held high, knowing that you did your best. That's going to translate again. We're talking life skills, and that's another way that people develop those skills to know it's not going to always go my way. There's some times you're going to take some L's. You're going to take some losses. You may go for a job and feel like, "Hey, I was the best qualified." You may not get it that time. Are you going to go back to bat and you're going to try it again? A friend of mine, Bruce Plummer, has shared. Hope Bruce don't mind me sharing this, but he shared something really vital with me. He had sent out over 200 letters when he was trying to get a scouting position. And of course, 199 of those letters you get, "Oh, thanks for applying, thanks for applying, thanks for applying." But he kept on going. He kept going up to the bat, and finally somebody said, "Hey, come in for an interview." So yeah, that just was our motivation to me to say, "Hey, you got to keep pushing." You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people at the job will say, "Don't go for that job again," but you got to keep on pushing. So that comes from starting when you're small, when you in little league, like you saying, and everybody cannot win. Somebody's got to learn how to take the L. So and do it
Right.
with pride. So that's important.
And take the L and show up the next time and give it
Right.
your best again.
That's right. That's right. Keep pushing, keep working hard, and try to get better.
Right.
That's important.
Your camera has moved up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
Yes,
it. Just there you go. There you
that's
go.
better right there. Yes. So do you feel that the communities are failing our youth right now?
Um, I think in a lot of ways we are failing our youth because it's critically important that you understand that everybody's got a part to play, right? Because it's easy to stand on the sideline and say, "Hey, this is not good, that's not good," but what are you doing to make it better? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? What are you doing to contribute? Are you dedicating any time? Are you spending any time with the youth? Are you talking to the youth in that particular way? And that's something that you have to self-reflect on and say, "Hey, I could do a little bit more. I can spend some time with the youth. I can take 30 minutes out of my day and talk to a kid." You know what I'm talking about? So I think that is where community is where it's built at. And of course, starting in the home, migrating to the church and the schools, those three pillars of the community. But it starts in the home, it starts with the parents. And a lot of times we know we got single parent households, right? Mom just may be raising a young man. But as you mentioned earlier, is how do I develop that young man and get them around some other males where they can model good behavior? So those kind of nuanced things as far as developing kids and growing them into successful people, I think that's a community effort. And everybody got to play their part.
Because the child has to be teachable.
Yeah, you got to be teachable. You got to be
Teachable.
coachable. So you definitely want somebody who can sit down and listen, and it's very encouraging when you see kids that are well disciplined. I was just out at my daughter's tennis practice, and I was complimenting another parent that her daughters are so nice. Hi, how you doing, Mr. Galloway? And it's just great to see kids get that kind of tutelage, and they're parenting and they got a strong foundation where that's concerned. So and they become they become adults with those same characteristics.
And those kids are willing to absorb what's being
You
poured.
better believe it.
They
Yeah, you
want
said
to
something then.
learn.
Yep, you said something then. You're gonna have to send me some notes after this podcast because you dropping some gems. But yeah, you gotta want to be a sponge,
Yes.
and learn and go above and beyond to learn new things. Every day is a learning experience.
Right. Because when you have kids who feel they have reached their capacity,
Right,
and just like you just referenced the sponge, once a sponge has absorbed its capacity, it no longer can absorb anymore. Everything else is flowing out from it.
right,
Nothing is
right.
retained.
Right. And you said something, I thought about that analogy though. And I would tell people all the time, you know how you've been in an environment, maybe at work or whatever, where people don't want to share with you because they think that gives them a marked advantage. And I'll always tell people, I'm always willing to share knowledge because that opens up a capacity and space for me to learn something new. And
Yes.
just like you said, the sponge effect. As I convey that to someone else, now I'm opening up myself to learn something new as well.
Yes. So, what led you to want to give back to the community and coach youth in Bogalusa?
Great question. One of my good friends. You mentioned mentors, and your peers can also be your mentors or your classmates or people that you went to school with. But Bruce Plummer played in Bogalusa, went on to the NFL. He was doing a football camp. Him and Sean Smith, another big brother of mine, they were doing football camp, and Bogalusa was always a football town, you know. And I went down to help him with the football camp a couple years. I said, man, I really want to do something for basketball. And I just so happened to be out here in Atlanta um, at a store that I normally don't even stop at a gas station after work. And I was purchasing something at the counter, and I looked in the aisleway, and there was a friend of mine, Nikita Wilson, who I hadn't seen in about 10 years. And we looked at each other. He said, Mike, I said, Nikita, and we talked, we bought our stuff and walked out. I said, man, what you doing out here? He said, I'm living in Atlanta. And I said, what? I said, I didn't know you were out here. And I told him, I said, hey man, this is kind of something I want to do. And he already had a program through his company, Sportsworks Academy, that he was already doing that. And he said, let's get together, let's have dinner, sit down, and I'll show you what I know and map out everything, and then I'll come down and help you because I just happen to be moving back to Louisiana at this time. So that's what we did. We end up starting Sportsworks Academy in Bogalusa in 2006. And we had our first camp there at the Avenue UYMCA at the time, which there's no longer. And then we transitioned over to the Avenue BYMCA, who've been phenomenal. But as far as my willingness to teach kids, I just think they are so in need of that attention, and I just know that it kind of motivated me seeing what my friends were doing with the football camp to say, like we just mentioned, I can do more. What can I do
Right.
to make an imprint? And so, and then we developed not just teaching basketball, but talking about life skills, good nutrition, good academic habits, being a good citizen in the community, taking out the trash for an elderly neighbor. We talk about everything, and we had different speakers to come in and talk about those things with the kids over the years. So it's just been and it's I live here in Atlanta, so it gets to be a time that's a struggle because you're doing everything long distance, but it makes it well worth it when you get a parent that stops my mom in the store and say, hey, my daughter and my son really enjoy that camp. When are we coming back? And that burns that fire all over again to do it for another year. You know, and on that note, I'm gonna make an announcement on your podcast, cousin. We're not doing the basketball camp this year. The YMCA is undergoing some renovations, and then there's also some scheduling conflicts. So, and I don't like to do nothing halfway, right? So we're going to postpone it until 2026, and that will be our eighth. This has been our 18th year doing it in Bogalusa. So, and we skipped one year during COVID. So we'll be back next year, next June, second Saturday in June of 26. We'll be back for our Sports First Academy basketball camp in Bogalusa. So you get it first. So there, I hadn't made that announcement, but I just wanted to say that since we're talking
Well,
about it.
good. Thank you so much. And that is awesome. 18 years. That means that you and your team understood that change begins with
No
us.
question. No
Yes.
question.
We
No
can't
question.
just want it for the youth. We have to be willing to participate in being the change
Got to
agents.
be to set the example. Yep, for sure.
So, how
Got
do
to
you
set the example.
feel when you are preparing? Like you said, you're going to be preparing for 2026. What's that feeling you get on first day of camp?
Excitement is so exciting because the other thing that kind of happens, you recycle some kids,
Mhm.
but then you have those kids who have come 4 or 5 years in a row. Some kids might start when they're 8 or 9 years old. Then you see them going to graduate high school. Sometimes they're in college and they'll come back and stop by and say, "Hey, coach, what's going on?" So, but it's constantly a new cycle of kids because a lot of the kids they start playing in school sports and travel sports. So you get a good new group of kids. So every year it's like a new set of eyes, and everybody's hungry to learn. And we have a great coaching staff. My brother Morrell comes in from Houston every year. He played basketball. He's a very good athlete in Bogalusa High School. Again, my business partner Nikita Wilson, and then a good friend of mine, O'Brien Callahan, who's one of the best trainers. He trains with the Nike Circuit and Chris Paul, and he has his own program called Only Basketball Elite. So he comes in also every year. We have that group of coaches and a few others that help us, but we got kind of the same routine as far as the coaching staff that we bring in every year. So I get sparked back up again, right away, get ready to go, So
So they are excited to be there, and
yep.
you are excited to have them.
Yes, I'm very excited to have them. Absolutely, I am.
What have the children given you that they don't even realize that they do for you as a coach? Because they come to receive from you. But I know that in counseling and working with people and wanting to see people evolve, they give you something as well. What does the children give to you?
um, it's just that appreciation that the kids give to know that we've had kids come up to us and say, "Hey, coach, thank you." And sometimes it's just a simple, "We thank you for coming in. We don't have much like this to do, around here, and we enjoy it." And that is more. And then, like I said, the biggest thing is speaking to the parents,
Right.
where the parents are like, they're just saying, "Hey," reinforces that he really enjoyed this. It was a very significant and impactful event for him, and that keeps us stoked. That gets us motivated as well. So between the parents and the kids, we get a lot of appreciation from them coming in and do the camp area, and that makes us, hey, we're gonna do it again the next year, right? And one of my neighbors, one year I came in. I'm gonna be honest with you, as parent. One came in and I was a little frustrated with the turnout, right? And I was talking to my neighbor, Mr. Frazier, in his backyard, and I was like, well, I would like to have had more kids. And he looked at me, he grabbed my hand, and he said, Michael, if you can impact one kid, you've done your job. And I never forget that after he shared that with me. It was very powerful, him sharing that. He's like, because just one kid, you might save one kid life, or you might put one kid on the right path. So that's kind of that stays and sticks in the back of my head, So, yep.
Exactly. And we know that whenever we are doing something such as that,
Mm-hmm.
those who are purposed to be there are there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's
It's
right. That's right.
not it's not just coincidence.
Right. Right.
So once you get to the point where camp has ended, it is time to close the book on 1 year and begin to prepare for the next year. What is more of a priority to you? Is it winning or personal development for the youth?
Personal development. That is a phenomenal question, because my friend Nikita, he always tells the kids, we just want to see you give effort. We just want to see you give effort. We want to see you learn and develop. And that's what we focus on, the fundamentals with the kids. And like I said, every kid doesn't learn at the same level. So when you're teaching anything, to be a good instructor, to me, in my opinion, you have to get on the level of the individual that's learning. So you might have to do 2 or 3 repetitions with this person, when one person may pick it up on one, but you have to be flexible like that. So we teach more about development and more so about character. And sometimes we don't focus on the most talented kid. We focus on the kid that gave the greatest effort. So that's our mainstay. That's our focus.
And that's great that you have that approach, because winning is actually for the
Right.
moment. If I develop you, I can teach you how to reach the top everywhere you go.
Absolutely. Because you're going to understand in parts of your life that you can win.
Right.
But you cannot understand and fathom sometimes that you're going to lose. And dealing with the losses, overcoming them, rebounding, and getting back up and dusting yourself off again is what the struggle is. So that's what we try to focus on with the kids. Just effort, keep fighting through it. You're gonna get better, and keeping them encouraged, because they gotta love the game more than anything else. That's what we did growing up, especially in Bogalusa. We loved the sports. We played anywhere. North side, south side, outside park, dirt park, backyard. We didn't care. We loved the sport. And that's what, so you got to do it for the love. Whatever you do, you got to do it for the love.
And you have to be willing to sacrifice
Yeah,
yourself
no question.
for the personal
You
development.
do. And you have to, in order to personally develop, you have to want to be coached.
Right.
And I think, and that's coaching not just in the sports sense, that's in everyday life. Whether it be in your faith walk, whether it be in your educational background. Sometimes, I mentioned some of my mentors, and I always kid Mr. Bell because he gave me a B on this paper that I wrote, and I was like, Mr. B, man, I did everything, and he just pulled me to the side and said, hey, I want you to be the best, right? And to be the best, yeah, you did most of the things, but here's a couple of other things that you need to improve upon, right? And that just resonated with me. Sometimes you think, well, this person being a little tough on me, but as you look back on those lessons that you learn as you grow and develop, you rely on those things as you go through life. So at least for me, it's been very impactful for me.
Good. And that's great that he was willing to see in you greatness and would not let you
No,
settle for average.
there you go. You just said it.
He did not let you settle for average, because sometimes people will take your average and having you think it is so great.
Yeah.
But what happens when it's time to measure up
To
on the
really
next
compete.
level?
What happens when it's time to really compete, right?
Yes,
And you know that, I mean, that formulates itself in relationships, and you are God's chosen vessel. He put you here for a purpose, and you have to understand that whoever comes in your space, and a lot of people that say they have circles. For me personally, I have a square. So whoever gets inside that square with you, you have to know that that person you're adding value to them, but as well in reciprocation, they're adding value to you as well.
exactly. Do you think that all talented athletes are equipped to be coaches?
No, 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 and a lot aren't,
Right.
because coaching is a lot like teaching or developing, and you mentioned that earlier. Because first of all, you have to have a level of patience with folks. You have to know how to communicate to different people in different ways. If you have a team of 12 people, you're gonna have 11 different personalities, right? So you gotta know how to communicate to each person to get to that person. But the biggest thing, in my personal opinion, is developing that trust factor, and that allows you to coach people hard. That allows you, just like a parents being hard, they can come back 10 minutes later and put their arm around you and say, you know why I told you to turn that light off? You'll see one day, right? So it's a trust factor with it. But no, a lot of people do things well, but they can't teach it well, if that
Right.
makes sense. And you find a lot of times some coaches weren't even that good of a athlete. They might have been the 12th man on their team. But guess what they did? They studied the game in a way and figure out how to regurgitate that to people the way they can understand it. They're good communicators. They know how to develop a trust, and they know how to teach concepts. And so that, for coaching, is the key. So that's why a lot of coaches, just because they were successful, it might be some of the greatest. You see some of the greatest players ever, they weren't great as coaches. So it's a special
Right.
skill set. Yep.
Because it's the train the trainer
Yes.
mindset.
Yes. Yes.
And there are some people that think because they were a great athlete, it automatically qualifies them to be a coach, which I find the greatest thing that you must have when you are trying to instill things in others is to garner
There
respect.
you go.
That
There you go.
person has to respect your voice,
Yeah.
has to respect the fact that you have their best interests at heart.
All the time.
And so
All
if
the,
there's no respect, it can't be received. I don't care how great the information is.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And that's the biggest part about communication and building that bond, building that trust factor with folks to let them, and a lot of times that comes through listening, not talking. A lot of people can talk, and they're some of the best orators. They can get up there and do a 30-minute speech without any manuscript, but they can't listen for 30 seconds.
Right.
So to be able to listen is the key. Take some time to listen, and actively listen, not just listening for the purpose of listening. Actively listen, take notes if possible, and you show a vested interest in that person. That person will say, that Mike's being tough on me, but I can take it because I know he's trying to get me better.
Right. And when I'm working with people, I don't coach in sports, but I do a lot of coaching in life.
Yeah.
And when people tell me they can't do something, I
Mhm.
always ask them, what's the part you can't do?
Correct.
Show me what you can,
Hmm.
because if I can get you to do that well, maybe that's where you are.
You overcome the can't.
Yes, but I need you to do what it is you feel you can do. I need
Yeah,
you to do that well, and then we'll
absolutely.
work on the other areas.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. Make an effort. Because a lot of times you get people, I know in my career, you'll get somebody an assignment Monday, you come back. How did you get anything? Yeah, I called. Did anybody answer? No, no one answered. Did you call back a second time? Did you try another number? It's just like, okay, you got to make that effort. So that's something too that's ingrained in you as you come up to let you know you gotta be. Competition is going to be there. There are going to be people that are as good as you and a lot of times better than you. And in order for you to be successful, you got to work harder than them. You got to beat them to the office. You know what I'm saying? You got to beat them reading articles and understanding concepts. So I think that's the biggest thing, as far as being a fully developed human being, is that you got to work at everything, try to grow, and then like be okay with taking feedback. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Hey, you didn't do this so great. Some people just can't take that feedback. They struggle with that. So
And a coach needs to actually know the level of the mentees and the people they're coaching,
right,
because there are sometimes you need to shift people around. In your mind, you thought a person could handle one position,
right,
but after you watch them and you see their skill level, they may be better suited to do something else on the team.
right.
And that's their strength that wasn't tapped into.
That's right. And to me, as leaders, and I know you probably see this a lot in your life, the hardest thing sometimes for a leader to say, I got it wrong. It's okay
Right.
to say I got it wrong, right? And if you know you got it wrong and you admit you got it wrong in front of people, they gain a lot of times they gain more respect for you saying, hey, let's try it this way,
Right.
or listen to somebody else's approach. Not doesn't always have to be your way, right? So I think that's the great part. Like I said, that active listening and taking those concepts, gaining buy-in from folks to know that you're not just going to come in the meeting and do all the talking. You're going to do a lot of listening too.
Right. And you have done such great work in the city of
Thank
Bogalusa.
you.
And in 2013, you received the key to the city.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel, being honored and recognized for your efforts?
That was man, that was phenomenal. Just to get that recognition from the city of Bogalusa, to know that you're being recognized. Sometimes you think you're not being seen, and then you're not really necessarily doing it for the adulation and for people to give you compliments and things like that. But it feels good to be acknowledged for the work that you do. And I was very appreciative to Mayor Mizell and Councilwoman Penny Douglas for making that happen for me. I appreciated that. And still one of my proudest moments.
Well, that's a great accomplishment,
Yeah,
and you need to be applauded and rewarded for taking the time to come back and investing in the community and the city you love, where you were
absolutely,
reared.
absolutely.
And you speak of being recognized and being honored, but you are also a pastor's son. A
Yeah, yeah.
PK
I
is what
appreciate.
they call the children of pastors.
Yeah.
How was it being reared under the guidance and the tutelage and the, I guess, the order, the discipline of being a pastor's son?
Um, it was phenomenal. Because, and I'll give my dad the props right here. I'm the biggest fan of my father, but he walked like that. They said in that rap song, "Walking like you talk it." He walked it like he
Yeah.
talked it, and just the way he conveyed himself publicly, privately, he was the same man, as far as in our house. And he allowed us to grow up as regular kids. He didn't force religion down our throats. He had one rule: you must go to church, which meant Sunday school, morning worship, BTU, night worship, and revivals. If that's going on, you're gonna go to church. But
Right.
he didn't force us into anything. I was active in the church, singing and things like that. But I'll tell you what it did show me though, how big of a role pastors play in people's lives. A lot of people that aren't familiar with that, because I would see my dad come home sometimes, preaching maybe 2 or 3 sermons, and he'll come in and mom got a nice meal laid out, and he'll sit down and eat, and he gets a call, something's happened, right? Either he got to go to the hospital, or talk to somebody that's bereaved and just lost a loved one. And so it was just seeing that bird's eye view. It gave me a total appreciation for pastors and the work that they do. It's just not about preaching 11 o'clock sermon on Sunday morning. They're administrators. They have a lot of people come into church and they don't really think about how is this um AC unit working. They, what I'm saying, and they don't really they don't grasp the concept. Somebody's got to clean those restrooms. Somebody got to make sure for the events that they got the food catered out by the ladies in the back for the missions. It's a constant organizational structure in the church that a lot of people, I don't think they grasp. So yeah, it was great though. My dad, he let us grow up normal, and but you had to go to church though. What that was, you had extra curricular activities. You had to make sure church was a priority. So that for us was, and then I had a lot of friends, Gina's Porter, who I saw today, good friend of mine. Their dads were pastors as well, Tim Thompson. So it was like a group of us that had dads that were also pastors, that we were friends. So we experienced some of the similar things. But one thing I did not like, I'll tell you this, being a pastor's kid. I hated when people said, "Oh, the preacher's kids are the worst ones," because I never heard the teacher's kids or the lawyer's kids or the police officer's kids. It was always the preacher's kids. And I just could never grasp it. Like, why people always down on us? Because it's my dad that's preaching. It's not me. You know what I'm saying? So that was one of the things I hated whenever people would say that. But it was great. It was phenomenal. And then the church family is our family too. I
Right.
call a lot of them aunties and uncles because I done ate at their house. I grew up with their kids. And one guy that Deacon Houston is a very close personal friend. He's a deacon at my dad's church now for years, and we were close personal friends growing up in the same age. So it's like you develop a real family bond with the people that are in the church. And then people have to understand too, when they come to church, it's just like the church is really a microcosm of society. You're gonna have politics in church. You're gonna have different people that might not be that nice in church. You know what I'm talking about? You're gonna experience. It's not like the pastor said. It ain't that walking with God is gonna make it easy every day. I just don't know any better way to go. You
Right.
know what I'm
Right.
saying? So you're gonna have your struggles. You're gonna have your situations, but yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it for the world for sure.
Thank God. Thank God for that. And how did you overcome that stigma when you say people think that pastors' kids are the worst kids? How did you overcome it personally?
Well, trying to make sure I didn't do anything publicly or be somewhere that would make a bad impression on my dad.
Okay.
So a lot of times I wasn't no perfect saint growing up. I was around a lot of activity sometimes. I might have been somewhere around it, but I just try to stay out of certain areas of town where they go like, "Oh, I saw him over there." It's just that, just trying to protect my father's name and reputation and things like that. So I was cognizant of that all the time, trying to make sure I made good decisions around that. Not that I did it all the time, but that was my goal.
Choices. It's about
Yeah, it's
choices.
about choices. Yeah, it really is. Definitely.
And that's key for each of us to
Yep.
know that we don't have to fall into what other people think we are. We
No,
make the choices to prove them wrong.
you better believe it. You better be an independent thinker.
Exactly.
You better watch who car you get into, right? You know, because you can find yourself in a lot of trouble just giving somebody a ride. You see what I'm saying? I was just giving him a ride. Well, guess what? He goes inside, he commits a crime. You are accessory to that crime.
Yes.
So we taught the kids about all that kind of stuff, about making good choices, your friends, having a I'll say this for myself. A lot of times when I followed the crowd, I got into trouble. I'm just being honest. When I thought for myself, and that's reason I named my podcast First Mind. Follow your first mind. Because you know what you've been taught. If you've been taught right, stick to the principles of what you've been taught and don't stray away from that. Because when you do, you find yourself susceptible to trouble.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And because you had such a great role model in your
Hmm.
father, who you said taught the word and lived the
Yep.
word, did you ever want to be a pastor?
Um, I did. I've had inclinations about doing it, but I'll tell you, I said to myself, if that would ever be the case, and I guess I'm 58 now, I'm a little late in the game, but I have to be right though. I can't be toe in, toe out. You know what I'm talking about? So to me, because that's a serious responsibility to take. You know, not just even being a preacher, but then being a pastor or a leader of people, because I believe that God is holding you accountable and responsible for the way you lead those people. So, you have to take that seriously. But yeah, I've given this some thought. I have given this some thought. Sure have. Yep.
And all preachers are not pastors,
That's right.
because some can teach the word and preach the word and rightly divide the word, but pastoring people is a covering.
That's right.
So you don't
That's right.
just get to preach the word, you have to be willing to cover the people when the mic is off.
You better believe it.
And just like you said, visiting the hospital and stopping what you're doing and meeting the spiritual needs of people. And there will be some people whom you will love and they will reject you because of who you are. So
Yes.
pastors become targets.
Yeah. Big time.
Targets.
Big time.
And the enemy wants to shut the pastor's mouth because they don't care if you change your life. But when you start impacting the masses, now there's a target on your back to bring shame to the kingdom of God.
Devil mad. You done made the devil hot. So
Exactly.
he after you. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a and we have to understand, everybody has to understand their role, and I think pastors have to be good leaders and good stewards of what God has placed in their responsibility to do. And those who have different roles in church, whether it be leadership or non-leadership, should also play their role in an effective way to do their part as well. It kind of parallels out to the community where we're talking about, do your part. You know what I'm saying? What are you doing? You cannot play in the game till you get off the bench. So you got to get off the bench and be active. So that's across all circles of life, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And while you have thoughts of being a pastor, and we know that it's a call from God,
Yeah,
do
yeah,
you
yeah.
feel
Mm.
that you are walking in purpose?
Um, somewhat, not all the way. I'm not where I need to be. Especially from a spiritual perspective. Um, I always think about this Bible verse for me. When I desire to do good, evil is present with me. And sometimes that's the case. You have the right mindset you want to do, but you got to be active. You got to go out and do it. So for me, yep, I'm a believer. I know what God has done in my life and with my family, and miracles that have occurred and things that God has done. Nobody can tell me any differently. But then I have a bigger role to play to get to that purpose that you're speaking of. And I have to take that leap and make sure that I'm active in that way.
Exactly. And purpose is already in you. And
Yes.
God puts
Yep.
that in us when He formed us in the womb. We just
Yep.
have to tap into it.
Yep.
So, what life lessons do you give your daughter that you want to make sure she knows so that she can begin to walk in purpose and see who God had created her to be?
Well, one of the things that my daughter and I and my wife as well, we do each day she goes to school, we say a prayer before she goes. Like before she gets on the bus. She had a big test the other day. They're taking milestones here, big math test. So we pray. We say our prayers and to let her know who God is. And kids will blow your mind sometimes, even if you don't impart that, they'll come back with some information if you just kind of lead them down that path. But more importantly for her, I tell her to be a leader, not a follower, right? Make your own path, follow your own mind, and make sure that you know that the work that you're doing now develops into who you become later. So
Right.
concentrate on your books and your work, and put your best effort in. Not that you're gonna be perfect, not that you have to compare yourself to other individuals who God may have blessed with a little bit more acumen, because everybody has the ability, but some people have an innate ability to do more just by just they were just blessed with that. Some people, I can go out here and work out all day. I'm not gonna be as fast as Raymond James or as Richard Payne. We call him Boo. That God just said them boys gonna be fast. You know what I'm saying? So I can work till I'm blue in the face. I might get a little faster, but I'm never gonna be as fast as them. So but take what gifts you have and hone those skills, and do it to the best of your ability. So those are the kind of things I try to impart upon her. And you're not going to get anywhere without hard work. It's hard work. You're not getting anything handed to you. You got to put in the effort. You got to roll up your sleeves.
Great. And that's key things to share with your daughter. And I'm sure you share that outside of your home with other kids
Yep,
that you come in contact with.
absolutely.
And you made reference to you and your wife
Mm-hmm.
praying with your daughter,
Uh-huh.
which is admirable because the two of you are coming together to let
Mm-hmm.
her see the power of prayer.
Yes.
You've been almost married 25 years,
Yeah.
and that alone deserves some applause in
Thank you.
times such as this.
Yeah.
How do you feel being married has helped shape you into who you are?
Well, I mean, I think I think the biggest thing is in finding a mate, right? And some people refer to them as soulmates or mates or friends or whatever. But finding somebody who is invested as much in you as they are in themselves, right? That's the reciprocal factor. Because there are going to be times along the journey of life where you're going to be challenged, right? And and that goes back to that winning and losing. It's great. It's easy to have a relationship when everybody making big money and we winning. We got the nice house. We doing it. But then when somebody gets laid off or something happens or somebody gets sick, what do you do then, right? And so that's to me the biggest thing in a relationship is a two-way street. It's not easy because you got two different individuals. It's just like siblings. You fought with your sister, but you love her to death. Nobody else better not fight with her. But it's like it's a ability to be able to cooperate with somebody else and be able to be flexible, right? And you can't be in a relationship who you was when you got into it. You got to continue to develop. You got to continue to try to learn yourself and the other individual, and the other individual got to do enough, in my opinion, to let you be yourself without compromising themselves.
Right, exactly. You have
Yep.
to stay focused on the why when the
Yep.
when gets tough,
Yeah. And
and the
it's gonna be some
how
days that gets tough.
and the
Yeah.
how gets tough. You have
Hmm.
to focus on the why.
You do. You do. You do. And then what and what do you establish on? What is the relationship established on?
Right.
And obviously, belief in God, love, and just respect for each other. You know.
Exactly. And that's great that you're able to share that because there are a lot of marriages that are being challenged right now.
Hmm.
And just what you made reference to, people are losing their jobs, people are struggling mentally, emotionally, because so much is going on. But
Yeah.
to be able to have that life partner that you can share life with, even when the road gets rough,
Oh yeah.
and be willing to say, we're going to go through this rough road together.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you need
Yeah.
that. Trust me, you're gonna need it. It's gonna be a time in your life, whether it be a spouse, brother, sister, mother, father, somebody's gonna have to prop you up.
Yes.
And you need that support. You need that. You need to be able to trust somebody that you can call in the middle of the night or have a conversation with when other people want. Just sometimes it's just being able to listen. They might not be able to offer any solutions, but just to be able to listen to you and understand your perspective. Sometimes that goes a long way.
Exactly. And I saw something on social media where it stated that your mother loves you because you are her son, your siblings love you because you're their brother, and your wife makes a choice to love you.
You better believe that. That's a fact.
So that's a powerful thing, because
Yeah.
your wife has to choose to love you
Yeah.
even
They just
when things get rough.
yeah. Even when you acting a fool or they acting a fool, you know what I'm talking about? So you gotta be able to develop that tough skin and know, like you said, know your purpose, know the why. Why are you doing this?
Right.
Right? It's something bigger than yourself though. So
And that comes from having a made up mind.
no question.
You have to have a made up mind that this is my life partner
Hmm.
and we're going to do this together no matter what.
Yep.
So that brings me to your podcast,
Hmm.
First Mind Podcast.
Yep.
How did you come to the point where you said, I need to be able to have a space where we can speak about the mind and let people explore their mind and their thoughts? Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. My podcast, I had a couple of different reasons why initially I wanted to do it. To be honest with you, I went to school for radio and TV, never used it as a career though, you know. So I was like, this will give me an opportunity to first and foremost talk about some of the things we're doing in the community with our basketball camp. It just gives you access to the people to be able to talk about that and put information out. And then secondly, to be able to talk to people for probably the first 2 years of my podcast. Pretty much everybody that was on were personal people, friends of mine, colleagues of mine, people I went to college with that are very successful. Some of them own businesses, some of them are professors, some of them are state representatives. So I say, I got enough people in my Rolodex to go through and call my friends and have a discussion. And one of the biggest things, one of the biggest reasons I want to do that was to concentrate on the minority community, especially with regards to the young black males, their high incarceration rates, high dropout rates from school, things of that nature, and talk about how can we mentor them, right? Be active in the community and allow these folks to talk about some of the things, some of the grassroots efforts they're making in their communities. And so that was one of the other things that most of the times during the podcast, we have a segment or a conversation around mentorship, how important it is, especially as a black male, to model that behavior. And for the young black youth that are coming up, that are having some of the struggles and some of the adversity, how can we weave them through this to make them successful? Because if you look at the par between the young females, like my daughter's 12, that are coming up, their rate of going to college, being successful that way, staying out of incarceration is very, very high as comparison to the young males from the minority communities as well. So, and not to exclude any other communities, but that was my main primary focus. How can we go in our communities that are underserved and help those people who are having these struggles and lift them up, each one teach one, lift them up and having show them an opportunity. Hey, we're from these same communities as you are, but we came out and we were successful and you could do the same. So that was kind of the premise of the podcast.
And that's awesome that you saw a
Mhm.
need to be able to develop a platform and a space for people to share that. How would people follow you and follow your podcast?
Um, They can follow me on Facebook on Michael C. Galloway, because believe it or not, the funny thing, I have a cousin that is Michael T. Galloway, so we both got our middle initials. But Michael C. Galloway, Facebook or Instagram. I also have a First Mind Podcast Facebook page. They can feel free to join that and communicate with me there. We do have a YouTube page up as well. They can go there and subscribe to First Mind Podcast YouTube. And then we also, with a friend of mine, Brian Callahan, we have a podcast called we have a podcast that we're about to restart about two-point guards talking about our faith walk and again talking about mentorship as well. So we have that podcast as well. So, and I've been on hiatus now for probably almost 2 years. Just took a little break from it, but it is coming back soon. I've lined up a couple of guests, so probably by maybe summertime, by maybe June and July, I'll kick off another my next round of episodes with First Mind Podcast. But yep, those are the ways they can reach out to me.
Okay, well, great. Well, once you get your podcast back up and running,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you tag me and share the post with me so that I can share it with those who may want to follow you after listening to this podcast and hearing your story of how you were able to walk into purpose and be a mentor to the youth in the city of Bogalusa and youth everywhere, because your story is so inspiring that it can go beyond the city limits of Bogalusa and impact children everywhere.
Let me say this to you. First and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation to come on tonight. It's been a blast having this great conversation with you tonight on your platform. And I will say that I'm so proud of you and all that you're doing. And I just pray and hope that you continue to ascend the way you are. And I'll be following, supporting, and we'll be in contact. Like I said, and I'll keep you in the loop on everything that I'm doing. Appreciate you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that with you speaking into my life, and it encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing
Yep.
because I want God to be pleased with me, and I want people to actually hear my heart and grow through the messages and the words that come through me as the chosen vessel. So I thank you so much for that. And I just want to share one last word with everyone regarding our conversation with Michael Galloway, who is a former sports star, mentor, coach, communicator, host of a podcast. One thing that he has shared with us about working with individuals, we have to be willing to meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get to a place where you do not try to evoke your ways on others, but you're going to respect, and then you have to give respect. We have to understand that everyone can be in a position to be taught if they want to be taught.
Mm-hmm.
Parents, we must understand our roles when it comes to youth sports. We can't overstep our boundaries. When you have a heart for people, it will show. When you love people, love will grow. So I want to thank you, Michael, for being on the podcast. I appreciate you for accepting the invitation, and your story is so great. You're doing great things. Keep up the good work. I am so proud of you as well, and looking forward to you returning to your sports camp in June of 2026 in the city of Bogalusa. So I thank
Absolutely.
you so much, and I want to continue to share content such as this. So I encourage each of you, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Tanshell Ward, as you will hear stories from my amazing guests. This is By His Grace podcast, not worthy, but worth it. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me, and I look forward to more content from you. You have a great day, and I will chat with you later.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.